Welcome back, football fans. Today we're delving into football history to look at some of the dirtiest plays ever seen on the field. From bone-crushing tackles to contentious moves, these moments have left an indelible mark on the game. So without further ado, let's begin our countdown of the dirtiest football plays in history. Nuremberg Battle 2006. Football was once dubbed the beautiful game by Pelé, but it isn't always as enjoyable to watch as that famous line implies. Many football games do not follow that adage. Some matches are so heinous, violent, and filthy that they make history, gaining notoriety for their heinousness. Physicality is expected and sometimes encouraged in football, but it can be overdone. A rush of blood to the head, a desire for vengeance, a mistimed tackle, or a referee who is simply out of his depth can all result in a match that is nothing short of brutal and savage. We are often grimly fascinated by these events, but they are rarely entertaining. We sometimes wish they hadn't happened at all. Portugal and the Netherlands World Cup last 16 match remains one of the most unwatchable matches in the competition's history, even if it wasn't particularly violent. Rather, this knockout game was a dreadful affair with little actual football, a slew of fouls, and a card-happy referee. The backdrop to this was FIFA's attempt to stamp out violent and cynical fouling prior to the tournament's start, which amounted to ordering officials to yellow card almost everything. The flaw in this strategy should have been obvious from the start. If everything is a booking, you end up with more bookings, inadvertently punish good tackles, and are no closer to solving the problem. Referee Valentin Ivanov issued a record 16 yellow cards and 4 red cards in this match, exposing the flaws of this approach in the cold light of day. Naturally, it was Mark van Bommel who got things started, receiving a yellow card for a cynical foul within the first 2 minutes, while Costinha was the first to be sent off for a second bookable offense, a completely brainless handball just before halftime. The second half devolved into complete chaos. Luis Figo headbutted Van Bommel, prompting the famous line from Luis Felipe Scolari, "Jesus Christ may be able to turn the other cheek, but Luis Figo is not Jesus Christ." Khalid Boularus was cautioned again in the 63rd minute. Wesley Sneijder was booked during a touchline brawl, and Deco was also cautioned again with 12 minutes remaining. Giovanni van Bronckhorst's red card in injury time was the icing on top of an extremely bitter cake that ended with 9 men apiece and a 1-0 win for the Portuguese. Commentator Gary Bloom referred to the famous image of Van Bronckhorst, Deco, and Boularus sitting on the steps of the stand as the bad boys corner during the game. Bramal Lane Battle, 2002. Sheffield United vs West Bromwich Albion, an ill-tempered First Division clash that resulted in the first ever abandonment of an English Football League game, has its own special place in football history. The game began with some fine football before devolving into absurdity, with superb goals from Scott Dobie and Derek McInnes giving the Baggies a 2-0 lead. However, the Blades got off to a bad start when goalkeeper Simon Tracy was sent off in the 9th minute for deliberate handball. To get a new goalie on the field, Peter Nilovu served as a sacrificial substitute. After conceding the second goal, United manager Neil Warnock made a double substitution in the 64th minute, but both subs were quickly replaced. George Santos committed one of the worst two-footed lunges you'll ever see, a tackle that was undoubtedly retaliation for Johnson's shattered cheekbone a year before. In the ensuing melee, fellow sub Patrick Sufo was sent off for headbutting McInnes. Unsurprisingly, neither returned to the club. Dobie made it 3-0 with 13 minutes left before the comedy began. Soon after, Michael Brown limped off, and 5 minutes later, Robert Ullathorne left with an injury. With United down to 6 men, the referee had no choice but to call the game off. The Football League awarded West Brom the win and 3 points, while Sheffield United were fined £10,000, Sufo was given a 6-game suspension and a £3,000 fine for violent conduct, Santos was given a 6-game suspension, and Warnock was fined £300 for improper conduct towards the 4th official. Albion manager Gary Megson accurately described the game, calling it all that crap. The 1970 FA Cup Final. The 1970 FA Cup Final between Chelsea and Leeds United ended 2-2 after extra time, and both teams took a lap of honor around the Wembley pitch. The field was in such bad shape afterwards that the replay had to be played at Old Trafford, where the atmosphere was far less friendly. The Peacocks were known as Dirty Leeds under Don Revie for their negative and cynical approach, whereas Dave Sexton's London outfit were considered flashy and flamboyant Southerners. The contrast in styles and geography spliced up this match, and the rematch became one of the most iconic matches in English football, for good and ill. The two teams were later praised for competing so tenaciously in such a high-stakes match, but they were also chastised for being so overtly physical. Chelsea's Ron Chopper Harris lived up to his name by kicking Eddie Gray in the back of the knee, while Eddie McCready completed a flying kick to the head of Billy Bremner. And those were just the highlights of the game. Hutchinson and Norman Hunter also exchanged punches, and Jack Charlton kneed and headbutted Peter Osgood, with plenty more niggling incidents throughout the decider. According to Wikipedia, modern-day referee David Elleray reviewed the match in 1997 and concluded that the sides would have received 6 red cards and 20 yellow cards between them in the modern era of football. Despite this, Chelsea's Ian Hutchinson was the only player to be booked during the 90-minute period. The Blues won the replay 2-1 to claim their first FA Cup victory, despite only leading the tie once in both games. Battle of Montevideo, 1967. Every year, the winners of the European Cup and Copa Libertadores faced off in a 2-leg tie in the now defunct Intercontinental Cup. The most notorious edition of the competition occurred in 1967, when Glasgow Celtic faced Racing Club of Argentina. The Hoops won the first leg 1-0 at home in a game marred by cynical fouling and spitting, but Racing won the second leg 2-1. With the tie level at 1 win apiece, a playoff was required to determine the winner, with Montevideo, Uruguay's capital, chosen as the neutral venue. Racing set out to cynically foul their way through the match, and it was a complete disaster as a game and spectacle. Rodolfo Perez Osorio, the referee from Paraguay, lost complete control of the game, while Celtic lost their cool and composure in response to their opponents' incitements. When riot police have to intervene on the field, it's a bad sign. 4 Celtic and 2 Racing players were sent off. The Argentine outfit won the tie 1-0 in the end. Juninho overcame a monstrous cold to become a Boro legend in the 1990s. Battle of Santiago, 1962. When it comes to the dirtiest World Cup matches, everyone remembers the Netherlands versus Portugal. But the most violent of them all occurred in 1962 when Italy faced Chile and not a single card was thrown. Prior to the group stage match, the Italian press had some harsh words for the host country, which heightened the hostility. The fight was more akin to MMA fighting than a football game, with filthy tackles, flying kicks, and punches being thrown all 90 minutes. The game was miraculously completed without the need for it to be abandoned, as Chile won 1-0, but it would have far-reaching consequences for the sport. That day, referee Ken Aston was officiating, and he was appointed head of refereeing for the 1966 World Cup in England. After another tournament filled with nasty challenges, he devised a solution. While driving his car one day, he came to a stop at some traffic lights, which inspired him with an idea that would forever change the game: red and yellow cards. The 1970 World Cup was the first to use cards, giving referees a new way to assert their authority over the game.